Alex. Hello, my name is Alex. I just moved to this area, and I'm trying to understand how things work here. Can you help me learn about handling emergencies? Mrs. Parker. Hi, Alex. Welcome to the neighborhood. I'd be happy to help. What would you like to know? Alex. Thank you. I want to know how to contact the police, fire department, or ambulance if something bad happens. Mrs. Parker. That's a very important question. If you ever face an emergency, you should call 911. Alex, is 911 the same for everything? Like the police, fire department, and ambulance? Mrs. Parker. Yes, it is. When you call 911, the operator will ask what kind of help you need. You just need to explain the situation, and they will send the right team to help you. Alex, that's simple. When should I call 911? Mrs. Parker, you should call 911 only if it's a real emergency. For example, if someone is seriously hurt, there's a fire, or you see a crime happening, you should call immediately. Alex, what if I see something dangerous but no one is hurt yet? Mrs. Parker, if it's potentially life-threatening, call 911. For example, if you see someone trying to break into a house or a fire starting in a building, it's better to call 911 quickly. Alex, what happens when I call? Mrs. Parker, the operator will first ask where you are. Then they will ask for details about the problem. Just stay calm and answer their questions clearly. Alex, and they'll send help right away? Mrs. Parker, exactly. Emergency teams are trained to respond quickly. They'll come as soon as possible. Alex, what if it's not an emergency? Like if I see something unusual but no one is in danger? Mrs. Parker, that's a great question. For situations that aren't urgent, you should use the non-emergency numbers. For example, if you want to report something suspicious, like a parked car that hasn't moved for days, you can call the local police department directly. Alex, do non-emergency numbers take a long time to respond? Mrs. Parker, it depends on the issue. Since it's not an emergency, they prioritize based on how serious the situation is. But they will respond. Alex, what about the fire department? Do they have a non-emergency number too? Mrs. Parker, yes, they do. You can call their non-emergency line for things like fire safety checks or advice on smoke alarms. Alex, and for medical help? Mrs. Parker, some ambulance services have non-emergency numbers too. For example, if you need advice about minor health issues or want to arrange transportation for a doctor's visit, you can call them directly. Alex, that's useful. Can I get all these numbers in one place? Mrs. Parker, yes. I'll give you a list of the local non-emergency contact numbers before you leave. It's always a good idea to save them on your phone. Alex, that's very helpful. But what happens if someone can't speak English well? Can they still call 911? Mrs. Parker, absolutely. If someone doesn't speak English, they can tell the operator their language. For example, they can say Spanish or Hindi, and the operator will connect them with a translator. Alex, oh, so I don't have to worry about language barriers? Mrs. Parker, not at all. The 911 system is designed to help everyone, no matter what language they speak. Alex, do I need to do anything special if I'm calling for someone else who doesn't speak English? Mrs. Parker, it's a good idea to stay on the line and help translate if you can. But if you can't, the operator will still use a translator to understand the situation. Alex, that's a relief. It's good to know they can help anyone. Alex, are there any mobile apps I can use to learn more about emergencies? Mrs. Parker, yes, there are. Some cities have official apps for emergencies. These apps can send you alerts about storms, floods, or other dangers. Alex, can I report emergencies through the app? Mrs. Parker. In some cases, yes. It depends on the app, but many allow you to report issues or get quick information about nearby help. Alex, should I download one? Mrs. Parker. Definitely. Look for an app that's official and connected to local services. It can be very helpful in a crisis. Alex. Thank you so much for all this information. Are there any tips for calling 911? Mrs. Parker. Yes. First, always stay calm. Take a deep breath before calling and try to speak clearly. Alex. What's the most important thing to tell them? Mrs. Parker. Start with your location. Give them your address or describe where you are, like a park or street corner. Alex. Why is location so important? Mrs. Parker. Because they need to find you quickly. Even if the call gets cut off, they can send help to your location. Alex. Should I stay on the line after telling them what's wrong? Mrs. Parker. Yes, stay on the line until the operator says it's okay to hang up. They might need more details or give you instructions. Alex. That's good to know. I'll keep all of this in mind. Mrs. Parker. That's great, Alex. It's always better to be prepared. If you have more questions, don't hesitate to ask. Alex. Thank you, Mrs. Parker. You've been so helpful. Mrs. Parker. You're welcome. Stay safe, Alex, and enjoy your time in the neighborhood. Alex, Mrs. Parker. I was also wondering about hospitals and clinics around here. How can I find the nearest ones quickly if there's an emergency? Mrs. Parker. That's a great question, Alex. The nearest hospital is City General Hospital, which is about 10 minutes away by car. There's also a 24-hour clinic called Green Valley Clinic, just 2 blocks from here. Alex. Oh, that's good to know. Is there an easy way to locate them if I forget their names or addresses? Mrs. Parker. Yes, you can use apps like Google Maps or any local health app to search for hospitals near me. They'll give you directions right away. Alex. What if I don't have access to my phone or internet? Mrs. Parker. In that case, you can call 911 and they will direct you to the nearest hospital. It's always a good idea to write down the addresses and phone numbers of nearby hospitals and clinics. Alex. That's smart. Should I register with a clinic nearby? Mrs. Parker. Definitely. Many clinics allow you to register as a patient. It helps them keep your medical information ready, so if you ever visit, they can assist you faster. Alex. How do I register? Mrs. Parker. Just visit the clinic and fill out a form with your details, like your name, age, and contact information. You might also need to show your ID. Alex. I'll do that. It sounds helpful. Alex. I also wanted to ask about natural disasters. What should I do if there's an earthquake, flood, or storm here? Mrs. Parker. The first step is to stay calm and follow the local emergency guidelines. For earthquakes, remember to drop, cover, and hold on. Alex. Drop, cover, and hold on? Mrs. Parker. Yes. Drop to the ground, take cover under a sturdy table or desk, and hold on until the shaking stops. Avoid standing near windows or heavy objects that could fall. Alex. That's clear. What about floods? Mrs. Parker. For floods, move to higher ground immediately. Avoid walking or driving through floodwaters, as even 6 inches of moving water can knock you over. Alex. Wow, I didn't know that. Are there shelters for floods or storms? Mrs. Parker. Yes, the city has designated shelters. You can check the local government website or emergency app to find the nearest one. Alex. What if I don't know where to go during an emergency? Mrs. Parker. If you're unsure, listen to local radio or TV broadcasts. They'll provide evacuation routes and shelter locations. Alex. That's really helpful. Do you recommend keeping anything ready for disasters? Mrs. Parker. Yes, an emergency kit is a must. I'll explain what you should include. Alex. What should I keep in an emergency kit? Mrs. Parker. Start with basic supplies. You'll need water, About 1 gallon per person per day for at least 3 days. Alex: Okay, what else? Mrs. Parker: Non-perishable food for 3 days, a flashlight, extra batteries, a first aid kit, and any essential medications. Alex: Should I include clothes? Mrs. Parker: Yes, pack a change of clothes and sturdy shoes. Also include blankets or sleeping bags to stay warm. Alex: What about documents? Mrs. Parker: Very important. Keep copies of your ID, insurance cards, and emergency contact numbers in a waterproof bag. Alex: Got it. Anything else? Mrs. Parker: A whistle to signal for help, a phone charger, and some cash. If you have pets, don't forget food and supplies for them too. Alex: This is a long list, but it makes sense. Mrs. Parker: Start with the essentials and add items gradually. Keep the kid in an easy-to-reach place at home. Alex: Thank you for explaining all this, Mrs. Parker. It's a lot to think about, but I feel more prepared now. Mrs. Parker: You're very welcome, Alex. I also recommend attending local safety workshops. Alex: What do they cover? Mrs. Parker: They teach hands-on skills like CPR, using fire extinguishers, and making detailed evacuation plans. Alex: That sounds useful. How can I join? Mrs. Parker: You can sign up at the community center or check the city website for upcoming workshops. Alex: I'll definitely do that. Thanks again for your time and advice. Mrs. Parker: My pleasure, Alex. Stay safe and let me know if you have more questions in the future. Alex: I will. Have a great day. Mrs. Parker: You too, Alex. Take care. Write a sentence in English in the comments section below. Find the mistake. Incorrect. I will add items in my kit gradually. Correct. I will add items to my kit gradually. Explanation. The preposition to is required when indicating the direction or destination of adding. Incorrect. What I do if I don't know. Correct. What should I do if I don't know? Explanation. The sentence is missing the modal verb should, which is needed to express advice or guidance. 5 vocabulary words. Evacuation. The process of leaving a place quickly to stay safe during emergencies. Non-perishable. Food that doesn't spoil easily and can be stored for a long time. Waterproof. Something that keeps water out and stays dry. Shelter. A safe place to stay during a disaster or emergency. Register. To sign up or provide information to be part of a system or service. If you want to learn how to handle an accident and talk to emergency responders, click the video here or follow the link in the description.